Maxie Dunham, a noted 20th century preacher and theologian, commented on a Charles Schulz Peanuts cartoon. At Christmas time in the Peanuts cartoon, Linus tells Sally the Christmas story. He begins, "There were 3 wise men, see?" Then in the next frame he says, "They came from the east and they were looking for Bethlehem." Sally is listening intently and Linus is really getting into the story. You know how they found Bethlehem? They followed the star. In the final frame, Sally asks the question, who was the star? And you know, that's rather an accurate commentary on an age that is preoccupied with stars. Not the kind of stars that glimmer in the sky, not the kind of star that plays a prominent role in the Christmas story, but the baseball star who signed the $30 million contract, or the pop stars who live in a world of glitz and glamour and call us to live in a fantasy world that will never be ours. No wonder Sally, not knowing the Christmas story, Linus is telling, asks, who was the star? There are those who know. The star of Bethlehem is Christ. And my friends, you will miss Christmas if you miss that. Today, so many people do not see or follow that star, Jesus. The light of the world come to bring a star's light into a brutal and savage world. Idols like singers and athletes that occupy the minds of many of our young people and even older folks who want their children to become athletes. When we were younger, how many of us aspired to be rock legends like Elvis Presley and then the Beatles and the other groups from England? I know I did. In high school, I was part of a rock band called The Neighbor's Kids, doing cover songs from the Beatles, The Ventures. Who can ever forget Wipeout with the drum solo, right? The Beach Boys, and other groups that were popular at the time. It was an era when small town boys dreamed of becoming professional baseball players in the big leagues or a gridiron star in the NFL. Today, parents want their children, and young people still want to follow the star of success rather than the one who was born in a stable and placed in a manger. After all, Jesus did not become rich or achieve MVP status on a sports team. So you see, in so many ways, we have replaced the star we should be following and worshiping with humans who have a talent that we too so often aspire to. And still, what of that star? What is the drama that surrounds the visit of these mysterious strangers from the East? Brett Blair wrote, "There is a beautiful old tradition about the star in the East. The story says that when the star had finished its task of directing the wise men to the baby, it fell from the sky and dropped down into the city well of Bethlehem. According to some legend, that star is there to this day and can sometimes still be seen by those whose hearts are pure and clean. It's a pretty story. It kind of makes you feel warm inside. There are other legends about this story of the wise men from the East. For instance, how many wise men were there? In the old days in the East, they believed there were 12 men who made the journey. But now most everyone agrees there were 3. One old legend even tells us the names of the three. Melchior was the oldest in the group with a full beard. He gave the baby the gift of gold. Balthasar also had a beard, but was not as old as Melchior. He presented the gift of myrrh. The youngest of the three was Caspar, who had no beard yet, but did present the gift of frankincense to the baby. Yet another legend goes on to tell us that after seeing the baby, the three continued traveling as far as Spain, telling the world the good news about what they had seen. These stories bring the wise men a little more to life and add some color to the meaning of Christmas. They can also get in the way. The problem with legends is that sometimes they add color to stories that don't need any additional color. In fact, sometimes legends are so colorful, they are unbelievable and can end up making the entire story unbelievable as well. Kind of like that star falling into the well. It makes you warm inside. It also makes you wonder. I am not out to ban legends, but I do think it might be worthwhile to hear the story one more time, the way it was told the first time. And in our gospel lesson this morning we read, Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea. This happened while Herod was king of Judea. After Jesus' birth, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. They asked, "Where is the child who has been born to be king of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose. Now we have come to worship him." When King Herod heard about it, he was very upset. Everyone in Jerusalem was troubled too. So Herod called together all the chief priests of the people. He also called the teachers of the law. He asked them where the Messiah was going to be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they replied. "This is what the prophet has written." He said, "But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are certainly not the least important among the towns of Judah. A ruler will come out of you. He will rule my people Israel like a shepherd." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men. He found out from them exactly when the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem. He said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report it to me. Then I can go and worship him too." After the wise men had listened to the king, they went on their way. The star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them. It finally stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. The wise men went to the house. There they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures. They gave him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But God warned them in a dream not to go back to Herod. So they returned to their country on a different road. My friends, how has God spoken to you about following the Star of Bethlehem? If you do not believe God has spoken to you, perhaps you were not listening. Maybe you were too involved in other things, like watching a football game or a basketball game, and could not hear God over the roar of the crowd. You see, Jesus was born under the light of a star so many could find their way to him, so they too could worship him. Yet Jesus is not just a figure worthy of our worship and praise. Jesus is a constant companion to us in our lives. Editor James S. Hewitt wrote, "Back during World War II, a little boy and his daddy were driving home on Christmas Eve. They drove past rows of houses with Christmas trees and decorations in the windows. In many of the windows, the little boy noticed a star. He asked his father, 'Daddy, why do some of the people have a star in their window?' His daddy said that the star meant that the family had a son in the war. As they passed the last house, Suddenly the little boy caught sight of the evening star in the sky. Look, Daddy, God must have a son in the war too. He's got a star in his window. Indeed, God has a son who went to war. But Jesus came into our world to go to war with sin. During World War II, Cindy's grandmother, Amelia Boney, had a gold star in her window in Versailles, Connecticut. She had 4 sons, William, Everett, Herbert, and Fred, in the armed forces, and 1 daughter, Dorothy, Cindy's mother. Cindy's mother was in the Navy as a pharmacist's mate. All of her children returned home after the war. But so many families lost their sons and daughters in that conflict. And I do not know how many countless men and women who have served in the armed forces of this country have attributed their survival to having Jesus by their side in any and all circumstances. As for me, there were many times when I was training in boot camp and afterwards that I felt Jesus close by my side. On Sunday mornings when I would go to the church service for Protestants on the base, we would always sing the Navy hymn, the title of which is Eternal Father, Strong to Save. And it's number 74 in our Worship and Rejoice hymn. And that would be sung at the close of the service every week. The words of the first verse are, Eternal Father, strong to save, whose arm hath bound the restless wave, who bids the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea. The other verses also end with a prayer for those in peril on the sea. And still today, whenever I hear this hymn or we sing it in church, I tear up. Because I remember how Jesus was with me and all those of those around me during those times. You see, my friends, Jesus is not just a beacon of hope for those at peace, but also an anchor for those in war. If we would choose to follow that star. My friends, I still choose to follow this one born under the star in that small hamlet of Bethlehem in Judah over 2,000 years ago, and who has guided my life through many crises and joys for over 50 years. I ask you, will you choose to follow the star of Jesus, born the light of the world to shine in the darkness of a sinful and savage world? For as we have heard, and I still believe, wise men and women still seek him. Amen.